Smackdown, February 10th, 2023. Jey Uso makes a big blunder with Sami Zayn, and the tribal chief Roman Reigns subsequently removes the Usos off the Bloodline, off of TV for next week's Smackdown. We talk all about it coming up. Ronda Rousey returns to WWE last night. A big fatal four-way main event to decide Gunther's new challenger for that Intercontinental Championship, and the tag titles were on the line last night with Jey Uso stand side by side his brother Jimmy Uso against Braun Strowman and Ricochet. All of that and a lot more coming up. First of all, a little programming note on the other side of the field with AEW. Next week's Rampage event is going to be moving time slots because of the NBA All-Star Weekend. So Rampage East Coast time will be switching over to 7 p.m. Eastern time, going all the way to the 8 o'clock hour and into SmackDown. So this is one of those weeks where AEW will be the lead-in to SmackDown. We'll see if that can ruffle the ratings. Right now, Rampage is going so far backwards, they're about to hit the 300,000 mark. They're about to be into the 300,000s. They only hit 406,000 last week. And it's not the right direction. You know you don't want to switch time slots in a moment of disarray like this, but they need some type of shakeup on Rampage. It is going to be at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. I don't know how that's going to fare for them, but they have a couple of good grudge matches going. Ricky Starks versus Daniel Garcia and Swerve Strickland taking on Dustin Rhodes. Potential for good matches. Is there going to be a level of care there? That remains to be seen. But that's a little programming note for AEW fans. And if there is anybody out there that actually watches Rampage, well, there you go. Now it's time to wake up, get up, and get amplified as we go over February 10th, 2023's SmackDown. Paul Heyman starts the show, center of the ring, and draped in both heavyweight championships, the WWE title and that Universal Championship. They look good on Paul Heyman, I gotta say. If maybe he was a wrestler back in the day in his prime, maybe heavyweight gold would have been a good fit for Paul Heyman. And those titles were extra shiny on TV last night. Looking good in the middle of the ring was Paul Heyman with 2 championships, man. He's just so fucking good at what he does, too. Dropping that promo on Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes and talking about how the gates of the Island of Relevancy have been breached, not just by SmackDown Sami Zayn, but also been breached by Monday Night Raw's Cody Rhodes. And calling Cody a dummy for saying, everyone's trying to make it personal. I'm just trying to win wrestling championships. And Paul Heyman says, well, for Roman Reigns, it's about more than wrestling championships. This is his legacy. This is literally his bloodline. Paul Heyman is just so fucking good at what he does. He can speak for 20 minutes and you lose track of time because he's so captivating and he sells the story. And even with Roman Reigns not being there, you got another level to Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns for, 7 days away at the Elimination Chamber in Montreal. Sami was there, though. Roman wasn't. Sami was. He comes through the crowd, shows up behind Paul Heyman. Paul knows by the reaction of the crowd, turns around, has that face that only Paul can make. And then Sami Zayn starts his rebuttal to Paul Heyman, which was very good. We forget how good Sami Zayn actually is on the mic because he never really got the chance since the main roster. His heel role promos are obviously going to be much different than when he was a face, and we didn't really get to see these type of promos since back in the black and gold NXT days. So some people either forget how good he is on the mic, or can be, or they just never knew that. They never watched black and gold NXT, and they don't remember Sami Zayn as that type of a face. So everything here was so well done. After Sami Zayn's promo, Paul stuck his hand out to get the microphone back. But instead of giving him the microphone, Sami was done talking. He just pulls Paul close in for a tight hug and has some more A message over to Roman Reigns. Same thing that Cody had for Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman is a huge middleman here. He has a lot of info that he has to send over to Roman Reigns right now. But I like Sami Zayn, man. Sami Zayn backstage a few segments later. Actually, this was hour 2 because Jay had already come back, did his tag match. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But Sami Zayn stuck around to talk to Jey Uso. And Sami Zayn, what he told Jay back in that parking lot is that he's going to find a way. He doesn't know how, but he's going to take the title from Roman Reigns finally. And Jay, you don't have to go down with the ship. Join. Let's take... Roman is the abusive cousin. And you know how that's going to end. It's always going to be about him. So let's find a way together, take the championship off of Roman Reigns. And Jay was kind of like, well, shit. Like, Sami, that's a lot to take in right now. I just know that you shouldn't be here. Sami Zayn sticks out his hand for a fist bump. And reluctantly at first, because I know it could come back on him. But he knows the sincerity in Sami Zayn, so he sticks out his fist, and we get a fist bump. And Sami Zayn takes off. I just thought that backstage promo spoke a million words as well, spoke volumes, and helps this storyline along even without Roman Reigns. So Sami Zayn, Paul Heyman to start the show, that backstage segment with Jay and Sami. Sami did his part beautifully. Paul did his part. Roman didn't even show up. Couldn't work that Friday at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. But the story progressed nonetheless just fine. And later in the night, of course, the Usos had a tag title match against Braun Strowman and Ricochet. So we'll see how that goes in a few minutes. If Jay would even show up to stand side by side with Jimmy Uso. Of course, we just talked about a Jey Uso segment last night, so of course he shows up. But how did it all unfold? We'll get to that. I think that was end of hour 1. So to get to that, we got to go to the first matchup of the night. Again, Heyman, Sami Zayn. They rocked the start of the show beautifully with just words. Well done, nothing overdone. Just a lot of hype, which is fine. Now in 7 nights, they have to deliver with Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. I don't see Sami taking the championship, especially not at the Elimination Chamber. If they want to run it back at WrestleMania with a title on the line again, then we can start to say, do they give the championship to Sami? And then on night 2, split the titles, give the other title to Cody. But at this point, it looks like both titles are staying together. Sami, it does not look like he's going to walk away out of Montreal with those titles. Could you imagine if they try to make this a triple threat match, guys? I mean, they can't do that, right? They wouldn't do that, would they? I mean, this has to be Cody versus Roman one-on-one. Sami's business with Roman should be one-on-one. A triple threat match is something that Vince McMahon loves to do, and it's not needed. Like Becky and Ronda years ago when they added Charlotte Flair for zero reason, literally, other than to have Charlotte Flair with the spotlighted main event. There was no reason for it, though. And we've seen this time after time after time. Daniel Bryan inserted onto Edge versus Roman Reigns. What was that, last year? A couple years ago? One of those deals where Roman Reigns and Edge were telling a beautiful story. It just had to be them at WrestleMania. I think Edge had won the Royal Rumble on that year, and Roman was the champ. And all of a sudden, they added Daniel Bryan. And I was just, it was absolutely befuddling. And to this day, it's funny to listen to Bryan Danielson talk about that match. And that whole concept, he says he's just as baffled as everybody else, befuddled, because he felt like he didn't know what he was doing there. And a lot of the time, he didn't know what he was doing because it just felt out of place. So it's so cool to hear Bryan Danielson speak like the fans and say there was no need for it. It was stupid, it was silly, and it didn't add to Edge and Roman. In fact, we got Edge and Roman at an event months later. I don't know if that was like a Money in the Bank or something like that, but we finally got Edge and Roman one-on-one, and that's exactly what WrestleMania should have been. So my point is, Vince likes to do these triple threats. Would he do some type of schmaz deal where Sami, Roman, and Cody all have to be in one match at Mania? I hope it's not a triple threat. Didn't even cross my dome piece until right now, and I hope that is not the case, man. There's two big decisions that have to be made next Saturday night. Kana Asuka has to be the one walking out of the Elimination Chamber for the women as the victor going on to Bianca Belair's championship match at WrestleMania. And the second big decision has to be Sami and Roman's business separate, Cody and Roman's business separate. Split the titles if you have to. There's 2 nights of WrestleMania. Roman fights night 1 against Sami. Roman fights night 2 against Cody. Do not make this a triple threat. It is not needed. It dilutes the waters. It muddies those waters to a degree where you're not going to be able to see through that path. So anyway, as of now, as long as they don't go to a triple threat type of concept, everybody played their role perfectly in that first segment, minus a Roman Reigns. McIntyre and Sheamus defeat Hit Row in the first match of the night. This was absolute slaughterhouse, a beating of Hit Row from top to bottom, start to finish, beginning to end. Hit Row was just in there basically playing the roles of glorified jobbers. Drew Mack, Claymore's Top Dollar, and Sheamus Bro kicks Ashanti for the W. Post-match, a Viking Raiders video plays on the Tron, vowing revenge on next week's SmackDown. Now, we may like Sheamus, no doubt. We may like Drew McIntyre, no doubt. They have star quality in them, for sure. What it should be? Absolutely not. Their booking has been botched like 99% of the roster. But Sheamus and Drew McIntyre have a lot more to offer. Them just being thrusted together in weird matches with Hit Row or in a feud with a tag team like Viking Raiders, man, you got to ask yourself, is this the best that creative has for Drew McIntyre and Sheamus? And if so, damn, pretty damn sad. Drew McIntyre was just winning world championships within the last 2 years at WrestleMania. And now here he is, taking on Hit Row and in a feud with Viking Raiders, who are still not even established. The Viking Raiders have had no real consistent momentum since being on the main roster. They don't have winning streaks. Even since they've came back a 7th time, and this time with Sarah Logan, Van Halen, it does not seem like they know what to do with the Viking Raiders. And if you think Drew McIntyre and Sheamus is going to help that situation, it's just not going to happen, man. You just hope that this will be a fun exhibition match for next week, and everybody can move on. Meaning Drew and Sheamus can go their separate ways. As a tag team, man, I don't know what they think is going to happen. WWE, I know for sure, does not have a plan with this. One day they just go their separate ways, or what? They have another match, their 8,000th match together, Drew versus Sheamus, when they finally break up. I just don't know what we're doing with Sheamus and Drew, and as somebody who is creative, man, you have so much for Drew McIntyre coming out of Mania a couple of years ago when he won that championship. You know, you have all these creative endeavors that you could go. Every avenue, every path will lead to something really cool for Drew McIntyre. Sheamus as well, by the way. So just throw them together. It seems very lazy. But we see that WWE takes that road a lot because it's just easy. Lazy equals easy. Lacey Evans defeats and destroys and dismantles enhancement talent Carmen Harris next. This was a straight jobber match, right? This wasn't just a situation where Hit Row is playing the role of jobbers. This is a legit old school jobber match. I love these. They're needed, right? It helps the superstar look, feel, vibe like a superstar by beating the shit out of this unknown jobber, right? You don't even care. The only thing you care about is that son of a bitch getting their ass whooped by the superstar. Too many years have gone by with Superstar A versus Superstar B, and then they have a rematch and then another match, and when it's all said and done, everybody is just because you're trying to save face for every superstar that loses, right? So next week, they'll get their revenge and they'll win, and then we'll have a third match and a fourth. Everybody becomes 50-50 booked because you no longer have jobber matches, man. You got to build superstars. You have to have your audience believe in these wrestlers. They have to have a level of care into these superstars, man. And if there's no level of care, because they're always winning and then losing 2 matches, winning 3, losing 2, losing 4 in a row, then winning 3 in a row, you can't really get behind anybody because nobody seems and feels like a winner. But jobber matches belong in wrestling today. They have to be in wrestling today. They always have to be a part of wrestling because that's how you're going to help build superstars. Lacey Evans was in one last night. No harm, no foul. Women's Right, followed by the Cobra Clutch, and Carmen Harris is looking up at the lights. Lacey Evans is playing this heel role much better than she ever did in the past. This is exactly how Ronda Rousey should have been booked from the beginning. I've said this many times in the past. I'll probably say it a million more times. I don't know how they made Ronda so irrelevant so quickly. I shouldn't be shocked because that was WWE's MO for the last 10 years. They shocked us many times and not in the best of ways. Not by a long shot, but this was one of those situations where Ronda Rousey needs to come in and absolutely start just destroying nobodies, right? Not necessarily go through the actual locker room of superstars yet, and you can slowly but surely do that over the course of a year or 2 years, but just start beating the shit out of all of these nobodies, these jobbers, these enhancement talents, right? Remind everybody just into who the fuck Ronda Rousey is. One time deemed the most baddest woman on the planet. Whether you believe that or not, whether that was accurate or not, doesn't even matter, right? That's what she was known. That's what her persona was. That's her character, man. And she just came in and started having 12, 13-minute matches, trying to put together all these sequences. And I'm like, dude, once in a while, that's fine. But you're just going to have to come in and absolutely tear shit up once in a while. And she just never did that. Or when she was oddly done with actual superstars, and then they would get like the upper hand the next week, so Ronda was kind of 50-50 booked. Looks badass one week, and then the next week she's fucking having a 12-minute match with the same individual. Shotzi Blackheart comes to mind with that. You know, one time, I think it was like a gauntlet match or something. I don't know. Shotzi got beat pretty quickly, 2 minutes tops. And then all of a sudden, many months later, they had another match, and they tried to build it up as the first time they've ever met. I don't know if they actually forgot Shotzi and Ronda actually have already faced each other, or they just didn't care. They thought we'd be stupid anyway. We'll forget about it. And then they had like a much longer match, and Ronda barely is fucking keeping up with Shotzi for half of it. And I'm like, what are we doing, guys? A lot of us are not going to forget that. Lacey Evans has the booking right now that Ronda Rousey always should have had. And speaking of Rousey, we're going to talk much more about her coming up in hour 2. She returned to WWE. But first, continuing on with hour number 1, backstage, Adam Pearce is talking to Sonya Deville. Sonya Deville pissed off. She's not going to be in this big Elimination Chamber match for the Raw Championship. Or she's not taking on Charlotte for her championship. She just has nothing big coming up for Elimination Chamber or WrestleMania. So she's still pissed off at Adam Pearce. Chelsea Green walks up. I love this. I've been loving this for the last couple of weeks. Chelsea Green walks up and says, and I quote, "Hi, I'm Chelsea Green. I was just wondering who the SmackDown manager is so I can file a formal complaint against the Raw general manager." And Pierce says, "Yup, that's still me. Both shows. We've already talked about this." And Green says, "How rude. I'm new here. How am I supposed to know that? And, by the way, I have facial amnesia. Did you just discriminate against me?" Guys, Green and Pierce are gold together. Honestly, Chelsea Green plays this so beautifully. Every single show, she walks up to Adam Pearce and asks him if he is the manager here because she has a complaint or 2 or 5 or 10. I'm loving it. Pierce, the look on his face is like, oh, not again. Yes, we talked. It's still me. I'm still the manager. Both shows, all the shows, all of WWE. And I'm sure on Monday or next Friday, Green will fucking show up again and ask where the manager is. I love it. As if she's just at an Olive Garden and she has a complaint. Yeah, I just think they're working really well together, man. Eventually, you'll have to have more layers to these two. And at this point, it looks like Green is going to be like a comedy type of jobber, comedy glorified jobber. because that's what it looked like later in the night. I think it was a tag match. We'll get to that in hour 2. So I hope this is just a start for Chelsea Green. I hope she doesn't remain a comedy glorified jobber. But as of right now, the backstage segments, legit LOL moments for BC, guys. Adam Pearce, Chelsea Green, absolutely rocking it backstage. Now, there was a tag title match to end hour 1, and it went into hour 2. This is Jimmy and Jey Uso versus Braun Strowman and Ricochet. The big story here, or imminent story, right, a microcosm of obviously the larger Bloodline story with Sami Zayn. But the story here was if Jey was even going to show up for a tag title match. For a lot of hour 1, all of hour 1, Jimmy was on the phone trying to see if Jey was on his way, talking to Paul Heyman, saying, I don't know if Jey's even going to be here. Until the final conversation with Paul, and then he kind of was like, no, I know my brother. He'll be here, Paul. He'll be here. So, didn't quite know. And before the match, Jey comes through the crowd. He does show up. I don't know why he would, because I don't know why he would be showing up in the crowd like he's Mox or the, I don't know why he showed up like he's the Shield, but he just came through I didn't really think of it, because even if you're going to show up just like a random fan, why would you be in section 300? Anyway, that's let's not think. Let's just be happy Jey showed up, and we get this tag match done and over with Braun Strowman and Ricochet going for the titles. It was a solid match, actually. Crowd was jacked up throughout the entire thing. So, Braun Strowman, he has not been horrible since his return. Braun Strowman could have been something big in WWE already. He's had 3 or 4 chances to really, they were catapulting this guy, and then all of a sudden Vince would take him back. He would give him 2 inches and take him back a mile, and he would just fuck with Braun Strowman nonstop. Now, we hear it was like, maturity issues. He was a little bit immature, or he made stupid decisions backstage, and Vince couldn't trust him with that spot. But 3 or 4 times? And then he was brought back another time, so now we're going to go for a 5th push. Or maybe they're not going to push him, keep him in a tag team with Ricochet, who knows. But, if they see something to do, you're going to have to eventually make up your mind. You're going to rock with the dude or you're not. But Braun has showed you that he can, man, and get the crowd jacked up. You throw Ricochet's flips and dives in that shit. Of course, Jimmy and Jey always put on really good tag matches, so... yeah, this was actually a welcoming, solid matchup. Usos collect the W, obviously. They're not losing their tag titles, not on a SmackDown. Not before a pay-per-view. And it was Jey hitting the frog splash and subsequent pinfall on Ricochet. I think Ricochet thought that Jimmy was the legal man. I think he did like a shooting star press, something like that. And on his landing, Jey jumps off the further turnbuckle he had tagged himself in previous, and he does the frog splash on Ricochet subsequently. So, pretty cool ending. We've seen it in the past, but still a cool ending when it goes to perfection, and that's what they did last night. Usos move on to 573 days as tag champs. Try to comprehend that, please. 573 days as tag champs. And hopefully Braun and Rico can part ways soon, right? Yes, they had a good match there. That's how far... I say the same thing about Drew McIntyre and Sheamus. Where are you going with Braun and Ricochet? Okay, they didn't get the tag titles last night. Are you going to see them together for the next 6 months in tag matches? All because Braun made fun of flippers and divers, and he caught a lot of flack from wrestling fans. So they had to put him with Ricochet. So now you have the whole David and Goliath tag team. I don't know how much more of Braun and Ricochet we really need to see. I think that was their climax, guys. That was their big tag team match for the championships. They lost. All right, now move on. But if they really have nothing for either of them, then WWE could absolutely go the lazy route and just keep them as a tag team, a thrown together tag team. Again, that match led into the second hour. And as I said, as Jey was leaving later that night or up in the parking lot, man, Sami waited for him and talked to him and tried to get Jey to really solidify himself with him against Roman Reigns. so they could find a way to take the title off of Roman. They even did a fist bump backstage, Jay and Sami, before Sami took off. And by the end of the night, we knew that Roman had to take a notice to that. And Paul Heyman makes sure that the Usos know that. We'll talk about that when we get to the end of the hour. But hour number 2, at this point, is full throttle. Natty and Shayna Baszler start the hour. Natty calls Shayna a knockoff Ronda Rousey, and Mohegan Sun, Connecticut starts actually chanting, "Knock off Ronda! Knock off Ronda!" I'm like, all right, that's a pretty funny chant, actually, Connecticut. Shayna says, I'm tired of everyone discrediting my accomplishments. Now, BC is thinking at this point, what accomplishments? You had a solid title reign in NXT, but so did Sasha Banks, so did Bayley, so did Asuka, so did Io, and many others. And it did nothing for them, unfortunately and sadly, on the main roster. Vince McMahon did not push Bayley like we thought she would be coming off of NXT in that title reign. Sasha Banks, Asuka especially, coming to the main roster and losing immediately to Charlotte Flair. Streak over, and Asuka's momentum completely crushed, and she never really regained that. And we hope that all changes in 7 nights. Elimination Chamber, and she walks out the victor and gets to go on to take on Bianca Belair for that championship at Mania. But the point is, Shayna Baszler was one of a long list of good champions in NXT that didn't amount to anything on the main roster, at least with Asuka and Sasha Banks and Bayley. We can put together accomplishments. We can put together a good resume still on the main roster, even though Vince has completely dogged them out. With Shayna, however, Shayna Baszler absolutely has been I can't even say a glorified jobber, because it's worse than that. She became the roll-up queen. You had a dominant performance a couple years ago at the Elimination Chamber, and that performance led to negative nothing, by the way. No momentum came from Shayna Baszler's big Elimination Chamber match. And for the last 2 years, Baszler has been the queen of the fruit roll-up. And a lot of those roll-up losses were in less than 2 minutes, guys. And it's just funny to see Natty and Shayna Baszler delivering this back and forth promo against one another, because the other fruit roll-up queen was actually Natty. Natty and Shayna Baszler got rolled up nearly every show, it seemed. And a lot of those were in less than 2 minutes. So it was just really funny to see either of them talking about accomplishments. Shayna says, "I'm done being in Ronda's shadow." Ronda's music hits, and here comes Ronda Rousey. Now, I put up a vid yesterday, and in that vid, one of the breaking news that we got was that Ronda Rousey was in Connecticut, and the latest word we were getting is she's probably going to be used for the show. So that was a little bit of a spoiler up here on the channel, but I'm not the one that broke that up front. But point is, a lot of us knew that Ronda was in Connecticut and could be used on the show. So we weren't that shocked. I think we knew when they started talking a lot about Ronda that was going to happen. But for anybody that didn't know that piece of news, Ronda Rousey shows up in WWE. We haven't seen her, of course, since she wildly, and not in a good way, lost that championship to Charlie Flair on Charlie's return night in literally a minute less than. And she has to take that L to Charlie, and then we haven't seen Ronda Rousey since. So Ronda comes back when Shayna says, "I'm done being in Ronda's shadow." Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler double team on Natty. Shotzi comes out to attempt to save, but to no avail, and suffers the same fate, actually. Gets thrown out of the ring, and then they reposition Natty to take out that left arm, and that's exactly what Ronda and Shayna did. There's nothing for Ronda and Shayna, sadly and criminally, individually, so a tag team is the only lazy option left for WWE. Now, that's not BC saying that, of course, right? I mean, if I have Ronda Rousey on my roster, I'm going to think of a million awesome things that she's going to partake in storyline-wise. And unfortunately, WWE does not know what to do with Ronda Rousey, or they just don't care. Shayna Baszler, for sure, they don't know what the fuck to do. So, I told you guys 2 months ago, I believe, I told you guys that get ready. Shayna and Ronda are going to become a tag team. Like, that wasn't just my opinion. That is what WWE was already grooming them for. If you guys look at a lot of the live event results over the last several months, a lot of those live events had Shayna and Ronda Rousey together as a tag team. That's not by coincidence. That's not just to show a live crowd another match, right? Another filler. They usually take that live event time to, that's where you do all your, and I'll use Ronda's word here, we call it rehearsing, all your practicing. That's what Ronda calls it. Way to expose the business. But that's where you get all your ducks in a row. That's where you learn what is working, what is not, what to take out, what to add in. The live events really help that. Back in the day, a lot of big pay-per-view matches, Vince would make them actually go to live events and have matches. It didn't matter if it was like a Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, or a Diesel, Ramon, whatever. You would go to a live event, you'd work it out, work out the kinks live, off TV, off of a worldwide stage, and then you get to the pay-per-view and you're much more polished. So my point is, I was seeing too much at these live events with Shane and Ronda, and it wasn't just filler anymore. It wasn't just, oh, we're too lazy, let's just throw them together for a live event. No, it was easy to see they were being groomed for an actual tag team. It was just a matter of time. Sure enough, Ronda and Shayna, that looks to be the start of an actual tag team, and I would not doubt, don't be shocked, if Ronda and Shayna end up with tag titles at WrestleMania. And I don't know how they do that. There's other heels with the titles right now in Damage Control. So do they have a hot shot title takeaway on like a Monday Night Raw? Out of nowhere, does Candice LeRae and Munchkin take the championships? And then all of a sudden, SmackDown talent goes for the... I have no fucking idea. But it looks like that's what's going to happen. It's a consolation prize for Ronda and Shayna. And you're going to have to do a lot better than that, because as a Ronda Rousey fan, I'll be the first to admit, Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler are damaged in WWE. Their booking has been worse than an absolute garbage fire. Sticking with the ladies, Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez defeat Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville next. Morgan pins Green as Raquel powerbombs Morgan on... I don't know what good that did Liv Morgan, but at least she picked up the W. Totally fine with Raquel playing around and even winning tag matches, as long as they leave the big gal stuff to Kana Asuka. Because it should be Asuka versus Bianca at Mania. Book that shit, Vince. Or book it, 3H's. Book it, Nick Khan. Somebody book that shit, because it has to be Asuka versus Bianca. If Raquel wants to play around in tag teams, if Raquel and Liv Morgan want to capture tag titles, and then that sets up a matchup with Shayna and Ronda in the future, that's fine. As long as Kana Asuka is doing the big gal shit with Bianca at Mania, I'll be totally fine with it. Fatal 4-Way main event winner faces IC champ Gunther next week in Montreal for the title. Rey Mysterio versus Karrion Kross versus Santos Escobar versus Madcap Moss. Imperium is watching on from a skybox high above. They kept cutting to the Imperium. Gunther checking out who his will be. Madcap, probably going to be his brother, right? It'll be Elias and Ezekiel and Madcap. Madcap collects the W. And it's the only thing they could do. You know, they were saying it was a shock victory, but if you look at it, Gunther and Mysterio already had their match. Karrion and Gunther doesn't make any sense. Big heel versus big heel, nobody's going to win on that. Like character development wise, prestige wise, nobody saves face. Gunther versus Karrion Kross, you just cannot do that type of heel versus heel. Santos Escobar versus Gunther is also heel versus heel, but it also just doesn't make sense. At least Karrion and Gunther, you can pit them together and say, this might work. Escobar and Gunther, yeah, it'd be a damn good match, but it's just so opposite. Add on to the fact that they're both heels as well, it's not the time for that. I don't think anybody thought Santos and Gunther. Again, Gunther would have to win, and then Santos would just look like a joke. You can't do that, man. You got to be careful. Santos Escobar is still pretty damn new to that roster, and a lot of people still are trying to find a reason to care about Santos Escobar, especially the ones that didn't watch NXT. So Mysterio is kind of out process of elimination. Karrion, Kross, same. Santos, Escobar. Madcap Moss was the only way they could do this. He's the only face that could easily be destroyed by Gunther at the... I don't know if that's at the pay-per-view, actually. That might just be SmackDown next week in Montreal. They're doing a live SmackDown from Montreal before the Chamber. So I think Madcap is the easiest option to go with for WWE. They knew that. That was the only option. So Gunther and Madcap next week in Montreal. Show ends backstage with Paul Heyman telling the Usos that the Tribal Chief wants them to stay home next week because, in Paul's words, sometimes you see things on TV that you wouldn't see being in the arena. And he pats really hard. the Jimmy in the backstage area. Just pat him really hard. Like, listen to what I'm saying. Roman saw Jay and Sami fist bump. Roman saw Sami trying to get into Jay's dome piece. Now, remember when Kevin Owens was talking to Sami like that and trying to get Sami to see what the bloodline is, Roman got so heated, he kicked Sami Zayn out of the bloodline, at least temporarily. Kicked him right out of the room. And this was no different. Paul Heyman says, sometimes you see things on TV that you wouldn't see being in the arena. And the Tribal Chief says he wants you guys to stay at home next week. Your services are not needed. They got Das Boot from the bloodline. You see the look on the Usos' face or on Jimmy's face, and it's just like, wait, something's not right here. Roman wouldn't just say that. And you got to remember, you got to think back several segments. Jay and Sami did that fist bump, and Jay looks like he is aligning in some way, form, or facet with Sami Zayn. And Roman saw that on TV. So Paul said, you're going to see exactly what Roman saw. And it's so, this Jay's blunder has just left a big black cloud on both Usos now. And the bloodline is absolutely in flux. We're going to find out a lot more next Friday in Montreal for SmackDown, and then 24 hours later at Elimination Chamber. I'm telling you, when you get these type of storylines, you get that excitement in pro wrestling. Pretty fucking cool. Roman is clearly not happy with Jay. Probably not happy with the Usos in general. And on top of that, guys, a little bit of IRL for you. The Usos have a bit of problems getting into Canada, I believe. That's always been a long-standing thought process as to why we don't see the Usos in Canada. And it's probably could be for certain arrests, maybe. But there is word that the Usos just cannot travel to Canada, and that's why you don't see them often, if ever, in Canada. I can't remember the last time. Maybe you guys can put that together, but that could be a thing as well, where they had to take them off because they can't go to Canada. If that's the case, I think there was a pay-per-view a while back, and they did not defend their tag titles either. They just can't be in Canada, so that's something to look into as well. And if that's the case, not only on Friday, but the Usos will not be a part of Elimination Chamber as well. And if that's the case, guys, if they're not a part of Elimination Chamber, you know damn well they're just not allowed in Canada because there's no way they're missing a big pay-per-view like that. I mean, the bloodline would have to be in full force, especially with Sami Zayn versus Roman. I mean, that's the story. The entire bloodline needs to be on hand. All hands on deck. So we'll know if they're allowed in Canada or not come Saturday. But for Friday, storyline purposes anyway, Roman Reigns is pissed off at the Usos, more specifically Jay, and told Paul, tell them to stay home. Their services are not needed next week. They have gotten Das Boot, and they will have to answer to the Tribal Chief. BC Amplified, that's SmackDown 2/10/23. That is your amplified review. Whoop this weekend's ass. BC's got to rock California for a couple of days, but we'll be right back at it from Monday Night Raw. We're going to start the week off amplified. Rock it out, unit. Top guy, I'm out. BC saying check you.